that happened. It's almost like they're despondent, confused, kind of giving up hope, not really sure what they should be doing, etc., etc., etc. And it's a very symbolic thing that Luke is trying to do. But along the way, they encounter this stranger. Yet Luke says they're two of Jesus' disciples, and that assumes that they have some sort of knowledge and understanding, familiarity, a relationship with Jesus, but they don't recognize him. I just always find that very odd. Every time I read this story, why didn't they recognize Jesus? It's a good question to ask ourselves. When I was younger, what grade are you in? Fourth? Okay, when I was in third and fourth grade, I had this teacher at St. Anthony's in Dubuque. She was a great teacher. But whenever myself, and I didn't do this very often, of course, my other classmates did, but she would go around the room and kind of get answers for different problems in math or whatever it is. And she'd say, Mike, what did you get for the answer to number 7? And I'll say, I didn't get the assignment done. Now, that didn't happen very often, but, once in a while. And she would always respond, but why? And I always remembered that. So fast forward 40 years, give or take, and when I was assigned here to Piazza and I was standing in the entryway of the church one day, this woman comes in from the side, and she looked vaguely familiar, and she said, well, hi, Father Mike, you don't remember me, do you? You're Mrs. Stanton. I recognize that voice right away. We can kind of intune that, and we recognize we haven't seen anybody for a long time. Their features change, and they get taller or shorter, they get skinnier or heavier, or hair color changes and such. We don't necessarily recognize their physical characteristics right away, but there's something about them, the voice usually, maybe a mannerism that they have, that will trigger some sort of memory. So why didn't these disciples recognize Jesus? I've always wondered that. And it's a good question to ponder. And it's also a good question to ponder if we were confused, lost, despondent like they were, and walking down the road of life, would we recognize Christ if he came to us? It's a good question. Would we recognize Christ? Do we recognize Christ? What's our relationship with Christ like? Would we truly know who he is if he truly appeared to us? Good question. As the disciples were going along, there was little cues that were coming forth that they should have picked up on. When Jesus, starts to explain the scriptures to them and, explain always what the prophets had said about the Christ and how he must suffer and die. Would not a light bulb go on? This guy really seems to know a lot. He is confused and is not sure what was going on before, but all of a sudden he's got all this knowledge, but still, they don't get it. It's like they're lost in their own little world. Does that sound familiar to us? We can get lost in our own stuff, our own things, our own perceptions, our own, thoughts of the way the world should be, that we miss the reality of what is around us. But it was in the breaking of the bread, that intimate moment of coming together and sharing a meal, that they recognized Jesus. Isn't that what we do here? We gather around this table. Do we recognize Jesus in the Eucharist? Do we truly see that it is the presence of Christ? Good question. It's good things to ponder and to think about. How would we know Christ if he truly appeared to us? Think about that as you move through the week.